My name is Russ Teall, and I was a track coach, and still am a track coach at Plymouth High School. I'm an assistant coach now. I taught at Plymouth for 37 years, and I survived all those teenagers. I've enjoyed living here. Jeanette, my wife, and I have been here for 46 years, and we just can't think of another place we'd rather be than Plymouth, Indiana. It's a great community, a lot of wonderful people I've met over the years, as well as my wife. And we raised our two boys here, and it was just a great, great place to be.
Tell me a little bit about how you grew up and what got you involved in sports? Like how was that a part of your life as a kid?
Okay, when I was little, which is maybe 6 to 10 years old, I didn't do much in sports because I was living in a lake in Michigan with my grandpa, and it was wonderful. But after my grandpa passed away, I was sort of lost. I didn't have any siblings, brothers or sisters, so I started playing with all the neighborhood kids. And we would go out and play football, we'd play basketball, we'd play baseball, do a lot of stuff down in the creek and play war, and just had a great life plan. I found out when I was about, 12 years old, I was the fastest kid in the neighborhood. We'd have races and stuff. I'd always get there first, and I had the best arm in the neighborhood as far as throwing a ball. So that started me on the interest in athletics, and then when I got into junior high school, I really got involved in basketball more than anything else. Made the basketball team, and I ended up being the point guard of our basketball team in senior in high school. But my favorite sport was baseball, actually. I was very good at baseball. I played high school ball, did very well. Played American Legion ball, did very well there. But I also ran track. And track to me, as time went, one of the things that happened in track was my coach was Dale Kelly at Concord High School, and he's a legend in Elkhart County. The Concord Relays are named the Kelly Relays after Dale Kelly. He retired and lives in Arizona now, and I think he's still alive. I got to get a hold of him and talk to him sometime. But I worked with him a lot. And he was a great influence on me. I didn't have my stepfather was not very worthy. Anyone to have a bad stepfather. So Dale was sort of one of my main images and influences on my life. And when I went to college at Ball State, a couple of my friends that I ran track with at Concord went with me. So I should have played baseball because I was better at that, but I ran track because of my friendship and because I loved Dale Kelly. And I enjoyed what track did for you. It made you tough, made you resilient, made yourself responsible for yourself. So that's what sort of got me started. I ran track for 2 years at Ball State, and both years I got hurt. I pulled a hamstring both years really bad. So that sort of screwed that up. But I still love track. So when I was in service, missionary service in Albuquerque with Jeanette, where we lived for 2 years, I was going to stay there and be a carpenter, and she was going to be a dental assistant. And we got called in the middle of March in my second year there. We were going to get out of service. And it was from Plymouth High School. And Louise Breeden, who was the secretary in the office at that time, she told me that if I wanted a job, I could have it. How that happened was the month before I'd been in Albuquerque, and Plymouth principal called me, Phil Houston at the time. He said, I'm interested in your resume from Ball State. I got a thing here that says you'd like to coach track or football or baseball or whatever. And our position as track coach is open, and also our basketball coach left, so we got a position as a phys ed coach, teacher. Well, he was in Plymouth, and I was in Albuquerque, 1,400 miles away. So we had no money at all. We were very poor. So he was going to go up to Casper, Wyoming, and meet his brother, live with him for a week. So we made an agreement. He would come down to Denver. I would go up to Denver in a car. We met in the courthouse steps at Denver State House. So we had about an hour and a half talk over coffee, and for some reason, he just loved me and loved my attitude and stuff. So he said, as far as I'm concerned, I'll go back and tell the school board we want you as our teacher coach. So I got the job. Well, Mrs. Breeden forgot to call me. I didn't know I had the job. So 4 days before school started, this lady calls me on the phone. She's crying. She says, Mrs. Breeden, and I forgot to call. I'm so sorry. She said, you got the job here. And then I looked at her and go, oh boy. She says, you still want the job? I said, I want the job. Piled everything in a little Volkswagen Beetle, and here we came. So we got back. We had nothing, no place to live. So her ex-brother-in-law bought us a trailer, moved into the OK Mobile Home Park here, and that got me started at Plymouth.
What a story.
Yeah, it was interesting. It really was. And my first year here was a real challenge. The man that lost the job as our cross-country coach is very successful. He went on I don't know what you call it, he took a year off school teaching. He was going to go to Australia and teach. He only had an opportunity to do that, and they weren't very happy because they didn't want to track me for 2 years. There's the man right there. And, as a matter of fact, since he's here, Alan and I developed a great friendship over the years. Our coaching philosophies are very different from one another, but it worked out real well. He had the kids in the fall, and I had them in the spring. And it was just a great situation because he was a little different than I was, and I was a little different than he was with the kids. The kids appreciated that, not being on the same idea, the same philosophy all the time. My first year at Plymouth coaching track and my second year at Plymouth coaching track, the track was over at Lincoln Junior High School. Mm-hmm. It was almost square, it was cinder. And in the last curve before you came home, there was a big metal pole sitting right at the side of the track. And it was really unsafe. Anyway, the first 2 years I had last hour prep, so I'd get a kid out of study hall. We'd go over to Lincoln. We'd have to line the track with a line for the lanes for hurdles and the sprints. That was my job for 2 years. It was really sort of archaic and back, but that's the way it was back in 1974 or 73. So anyway, I did that for 2 years, and then we got a track finally, an all-weather track in 75. And that really made things a lot easier for us. And I was very happy with the influence that Dale Kelly gave me from Concord as a coach. And my track coach in college, Dick Kevin, made me tough too. It was an idea of toughness of being fair to people. That always stuck with me. It motivated me. I ended up being a yeller and a screamer as a motivator. Dale Kelly was as quiet as a church mouse, but when he gave me that look and said something, it was just us. He was a great influence on me, great man. I wish I could have been like that. So my first year, we went 6 and 7. I had 3 seniors on the team, Jeff Gangloff and Tom Hoover and Dan Widener. And then the next year, my second year there, we went 9 and 3, which is 1975. We went over to Napanee, which is Northwood now. And they'd been pounding us. All the schools had been pounding us. Warsaw beat us the year I came here, 127 to 0, pounded us. We paid them back, though, later. Anyway, I went over to Napanee, and the great Jim Andrews, who was their football coach, who's a legend in Northwood, we ran a meet there. We beat him by half point. My kids carried me off the track because they hadn't known about winning. So we get over there at the side of the track. I get down, and here comes Jim. We shake hands, and he says, "You're going to be a problem, aren't you?" I said, "Well, I hope so, Coach." So we had a great relationship until he unfortunately died in a car accident. But that started my desire to make kids better, to motivate them, to teach them and inspire them. And if you had to, give them a little discipline once in a while. So the next year, which is 76, my team was 12 and 2. And we just missed winning the conference that year and had a lot of great athletes. I had a kid, Mitch Ripley, who's a minister now. He didn't know, he wasn't a sprinter until he was a junior. One of the kids on the team came with his coach. I think Mitch is faster than anybody else on the team. I didn't know that. He didn't either. So we ran a sprint against our best sprinter. Mitch smoked him. So our next meet was with Concord, who had the kid that was a champion of 100, 200 year before. Boy, Dale was mad at me. He said, "Where did you get him at?" I said, "Well, he's a B-team hurdler." He said, "Well, I guess he's a B-team hurdler anymore." I said, "No, Coach, he's not." So that was a lot of fun. So I had a lot of I'd like to mention my coaches over the years. My first 2 coaches were Sam Goebel and Chuck Johnson, who are long retired. Sam owns a really company here in Plymouth, done very well for himself. Those 2 guys took it for 2 years, and then I had Gary Watkins, who now lives in Maryland and sells books for a company. Has done very well for himself. Then later I had Larry Holloway was a coach for him for a while. Tom Eisenbarger coached with me for a while. And then along came Roy Benj, who's a just retired athletic director. He ran at Ball State. He was a great runner in high school, state runner-up in the state meet in Indiana. He ran 4:06 in a mile at Ball State.
Wow.
He was a 151 half miler too. He was a really good athlete. So he came looking for a job in 1978, 79 season. And I just lost some good athletes the years before. And I talked to him and his wife, and they were excited about getting a chance. And we hired him, thank goodness. And he ended up coaching with me for 16 years. Just did a great job as an assistant coach. You could not have a better assistant coach. I often called him a co-head coach because he was really knowledgeable. Wasn't as enthusiastic as I was, but awful close. And he retired from doing that and took the AD job in 1997. Bill Nixon. Oh, yeah. Roger Dodson, who was a star athlete at Bremen. He came home and coached with us for 2 years. He was a great, great assistant coach. I had Ron Harnish, who was an All-American discus and shot putter at Manchester College. He's on the picture back here. He coached with us for a couple of years. And then there's just an evolution of having people help you get better with the kids. And they had the same philosophy that I did. I want the kids to have fun. Got to learn how to work hard and enjoy it and get yourself into a situation where you can become a great competitor. And all those things took place over the years. And then the 1980s came along, and glory. We won, well, I think, as far as I know, we're the only team in the conference for all these years that won 5 conference championships in one decade. I just had great kids. They responded to our coaching, and I had some great experiences with those kids. It was wonderful. But in 1980s, I had 3 bad situations. It just broke my heart, broke the kids' heart. In 1977, which is a decade before, Charlie Fox was runner-up in the state in the 2-mile. He led the whole 2-mile. Well, we're running at Indianapolis North Central, which was the last year they had the state meet at North Central, and Charlie's leading the race for the whole 7.5 laps. There's a kid named Bill Keller from Kokomo and another kid from Indianapolis somewhere. I don't remember his name, but Charlie had about a 60-yard lead going in the last lap, and Charlie was never a sprinter. He was always just Energizer Bunny, go, go, go. So he got to the last turn. He's coming in. Keller got him by a yard, and the other kid got him about half a yard. He was just being a state champion. That was a major disappointment. Charlie Fox was the hardest worker I ever had. He ran 1,000 miles in the winter, every winter. Remember the great blizzard, 77, 78? Charlie ran into school that morning. He got to town and found out school was out. He ran through the blizzard to go to school. He did that every morning. He really did. He was just an incredibly hard worker, and now he's an accountant, done very well for himself. That was my first major disappointment. And then in 1982, we had a kid named Brian Cavanini, who's in one of the albums here. He was just an outstanding football player and track guy, and he was just a great person. He now runs a big car factory in Asheville, North Carolina, a huge company. He's got his degree from Russel. Anyway, his senior year, he's doing extremely well in the hurdles, the intermediate hurdles. So we go to Kokomo for the regional, and Brian's just cooking everybody. He's almost a whole hurdle ahead into the last hurdle. He caught his trail toe in the last hurdle and fell. So he got up and ran. He qualified for the state. He got 3rd place and just made it. So the kid that beat him at Kokomo, that kid won the state the next week. And Brian would have won the state, no question about it. That's a second disappointment. I felt so bad because he's a great kid. All these kids are great kids. Then in 1983, I had the great sprinter Carlos Fuentes, who won 3 Goshen Relays titles and almost won a 4th in the 100 from freshman year to senior year. So we're running against Warsaw, and I had lost all those kids in '82, Joe Boener and all those great other people, Cavanini. So I had 2 great people left, Brian Sullivan and Carlos Fuentes. They scored just 2 guys scored a lot of points for us in the conference meet. Brian won a half mile and ran a mile relay team, and Carlos never ran a 400. And he was cut out of piano wire. He was a Puerto Rican kid, nice kid, real short, but could run like an antelope. And so he had to run 2 heats of the 100 and 200. Then he had to run the 400 open, which he'd never done. He tied the school record of Jim Parsons, ran 49.3. So he's got to run the 200 yet after winning the 100, ran 110.7. So he gets to 200, he's just cramped up on the track. And there's a kid that ran at Warsaw named Rick Littlejohn who was really fast, almost beat Carlos during the year in 200. So he's got one leg. He's got one leg to run, his other leg's cramped up. He ran and won the 200 and beat Littlejohn by a yard. Was that courageous or what? That was incredible. Well, anyway, we went to the state meet that year. And he's in the finals in the 200. And beside Tim are 2 Gary Roosevelt kid on one side, Gary Roosevelt kid on the other side, and he's in the middle. So our starter was Jim Hingle, who was a great, great guy. He was getting older. He used to be a coach at Ball State for a long time. I knew him. He gets ready to start. All of a sudden, here comes thunderstorms comes in. It's raining like crazy, lightning, hail. He started the race, the 200 final. So we come around the curve, all of a sudden the shoe goes flying in the air. It's Carlos' shoe. So he finishes 4th, doesn't get a medal, because in those days he only gets 3 medals. He ran 22.03, which is our school record for a long time. Still is our school record. He ran in 1 shoe. I was so sad about that. I felt so horrible about that. That was horrible. It really was. And then, I don't remember what the other one was. We had another guy that had the same kind of situation where he could have won a state championship and didn't. So anyway, there's some frustrations being a coach, because you put all this time into these kids, you grow to love them, they're your kids, you motivate them, and things like that happen. You just, why? Why did that happen? It happens. But they all ended up having great careers and moved on to better things in life, but probably more frustrating for the coach than it was them in a way. You know what I'm saying?
Because they're kids and they're...
Yeah, we had, and I got to tell you about Joe Boener. Joe ran the year before, went to the Naval Academy, got a scholarship there, was an appointment to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. Joe Boener was the toughest kid I ever had, and I had a lot of tough kids. Joe Boener ran the mile and a half mile in 1982. We'd won the conference championship the year before by 1 point over Concord. And we had running at Goshen was getting better. They just joined our conference. So he's won the mile and the half mile. Between the half mile and the 2 mile is 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes. He ran 4:26 and he ran 1:50, 1:58 flat, won both of them. So 5 minutes later, he's running the 2 mile. We needed for him to get at least third place, and he's gassed. So he ran the whole 2 mile. He's fifth place. He comes up. He ran 9:53.1 after those races and got us third place. We won the meet by 2 points. That's a competitor, tough guy who you love to appreciate. And he goes on being a commander in the Navy and sent out sorties on the USS Independence and the USS Abraham Lincoln in the first Gulf War from Italy. That's the kind of kids I got to be around. Just that perfect example kind of kid. So all those are my highlights. And then we won the conference in 81 and 82, beat my old coach Dale Kelly, which was wonderful. Then in 84, 83, we ran out of people. Sullivan and Boener had graduated. Fuentes had graduated. So 84 came along. We weren't very good that year. We were like 6-4, but the kids would try, and it was fine. We understood that. So next year, the young kids like Stevens, Brian, yeah, I won't get to that. Darren Stevens, who's married to Angie Hunter, who's married Beth Hunter's girl. He was a hurdler. Don Haysop was a hurdler, and they had been younger, and they got older, and they got really good. Darren jumped 22 feet in a long jump, and both of them were 15 flat hurdlers. Along came Pete Bigler as a freshman. And we heard about him from junior high school. I knew he'd run a 4:39 8th grade mile, which is outstanding.
That's crazy.
So we're moving along with him, and he ended up running 4:18 as a freshman in the mile. But the first relay we put him in was against Goshen. And we were just curious about if we anchored him in the mile relay, because he'd not run that yet for us. So this big, tall, blonde kid, I don't remember his name, was a real good 400. So Pete's beating him, and the kid comes around the curve, and Pete goes outside trying to beat him. That kid held Pete off the whole curve, wouldn't let him beat him. The kid ends up beating him. And Pete ran 49.4 in a relay leg, and the kid beat him. So both Coach Menz and I took him aside and said, Pete, don't ever try to pass a kid in the curve again. Sit on his back. And he never did. He learned his lesson there. But Pete was such an outstanding athlete. You know, he ran in his sophomore year before he started getting injury problems. He ran 4:15.16 at the state, got runner-up by that far. That's just half the story. At the start of the last lap, he was last. He lost by that much. He just saved too much energy. He could have won the state. He just took off he just passed everybody and almost caught that Ron Zone kid from Elkhart Memorial. Just lost to him. So that was a disappointment. It was a blessing too to get to coach Pete Bigler. He was an outstanding athlete. Went to IU. His legs were beat up from overtraining and didn't do as well as he could have done. But he was a great kid to have. He could do it. 1:53 half, 4:15 mile. And at Purdue, his junior year, we used to go down to Purdue relays, Boilermaker relays down there, and we was a junior with a couple of other kids. He ran the anchor leg of a distance mounted relay on the 200-meter track. What do you think his mile time was? 4:08. He ran 4:08. We thought he was going to end up just being a state champion by a long ways in the mile. Started having IT band syndrome problems on his knees and messed him up. It was really bad. So he never got out of Pete what he could have because he just overtrained, and it just happened. So it's too bad. But he was a tremendous athlete. He won us a championship with those other two kids in '85. So we now won 3 championships. So '86 and '87 we didn't win. We got runner-up both years to Warsaw and Concord. Just barely beat us. So we could have won 7 in a row. We didn't. So '88 comes along, and Bigler's a senior. Ed Reese, the hurdler's a senior, and Glenn Wider's a junior, who's a great. He went to Naval Academy also. So we lost in the championship meet. We lost to Warsaw by about 8 points, and they beat us in regular season and overtime. And that was disappointing. And then the next year in '89 or '88, we came back and beat them. We beat them in '88 and '89, both years, Warsaw. And the '89 team was interesting because I had so many kids I coached. We would be here for hours talking about it. But I didn't just love the superstars. I love kids that I just worked hard. If you worked hard and got better, hallelujah, I love you, man. We had a kid named Dennis Anders who never ran track. His best friend was A.J. Stuckenborg. Well, A.J.'s a quarter miler for us, was a good quarter miler. So Concord's tough again in '89. And we still got Glenn Wider and some other guys. Got a good hurdler. Ed Matthews is a 14.7 guy. So we're scoring some points. Didn't have a hurdler. Didn't have a good sprinter that year. Was that an okay sprinter? I'm not going to mention his name. It wouldn't be fair. But anyway, we get down to the end of the meet, it's a mile relay, and Concord's ahead of us by 2 points. I'm sorry, 1 point. They're ahead of us at 1 point, mile relay go. Dennis Anders ran the mile relay all year and never ran the anchor. He always ran the second or third leg because he was. So Stukenborg comes up to me, his best friend, says, Coach, run Anders on the end. What? He said, he'll do it for you, Coach. Are you sure? Yeah. So I trusted AJ, so we switched it around. So Anders ran the anchor leg. Well, Concord had a kid named Michael Ravento who had been a 2-time 400-meter champion for Concord in the meet in the 2 previous years. So Stukenborg gives Anders a baton, and we're behind about 4 yards of Ravento. So Anders takes off, gets him, oh no, he's going. So I ran on the back stretch, and Ravento's just right on his back. So I come around the curve, here comes Ravento's around Anders. Anders gets about 40 yards from the finish line and explodes. Just explodes and goes past Ravento's like a train. He beat him by 5 yards, so we won the conference meet because of Dennis Anders, who'd been out 1 year and was a buddy of Stukenborg. Just kids like that. Good surprises.
Well, it says something about, that you were willing to take that suggestion from his friend.
Oh, yeah.
You were willing to do that.
I was never above listening to people, even the kids. I mean, if you can learn something from somebody and they can better you for it or give you a better suggestion, do it. If you can't do that, you got a problem in life. That's what I'm saying. So I just, as you can see, I'm very enthusiastic about track and field. I could go on and on for hours about the kids I had and the things that they did. And it made me feel like, you know what? This is good stuff. You couldn't pay me $2 million to go back and do it over and not coach track. I wouldn't do it because it was part of me. It made me a better person. It kept me young. I learned about people that way. I learned about motivating people and teaching them. And I was a good teacher, but when I got on track, the motivation was there. I coached basketball those years. I was a good basketball coach, but track special. You know what? Here's the deal with me in track and field. And I still tell the kids that as an assistant coach. When you go out in life, there's challenges out there that are difficult challenges, like having cancer or whatever else. So do you remember some of these practices you went through in track and how hard it was and how difficult, but you made it through? I said, you think back those things and think about what you're doing now. If you got through this, you can get through that, young man. And a lot of them said, Coach, 20 years later, I still remember what you said to us, Coach, and you were right. I said, yeah, you're going to have babies, maybe the baby will have a problem, you're going to get married to a wife, and you might have marital problems. You'll find a way to work through them. And that's what they tell me. So that's my take on being a coach, is using it as a life lesson, not just being a track coach. So that's my great experience of coaching track. These kids back in the early 80s were tough.
Yeah.
They were tough kids.
Yeah.
You know who Dwayne Culp is? Big sheriff's deputy, is a detective for the Marshall County Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
Right now.
He weighs about 300 pounds now.
Yeah.
He's a big boy, but he's big. In high school, he was about 6'4", 185 pounds. He started hurdling when he was a sophomore. He's really clumsy. His senior year, got to state, ran 14.7, almost broke our school record, missed by one place of getting a medal in the hurdles. Just that kind of kid. I'm so proud of somebody doing that. He wanted to do it so bad and worked at it. And wow, just when you see somebody prosper and you've been part of that, how can you not be happy with the situation? It's just wonderful. Those kids, and you're on track and you got 5 people cheering for you. In basketball, in football, and even in baseball, you got gyms full of 4,000 or 5,000 people. In football, you got 3,000 people. When you're running track, you do it for yourself. Because when you have a problem in life later, there's not going to be people cheering for you. You got to do it yourself. So it's like wrestling and swimming and so those individual sports. You got to learn to do it yourself because nobody else is helping you. And I have nothing against team sports because I love them because that's got a lot of merit to it, learning how to work with people. But a lot of times you have to do things on your own. You got to get motivated to do it, and you have to have no fear about getting it done. And that's what you learn in a sport like track and field. I always preach that to those kids. I did. So you can see I'm very enthused about this because I'm getting to spill my beans about how I feel about the kids and the sport of track and field. And as I've gotten to be an assistant coach, it's even more so. I actually love the kids, and I love them in the right way, And I've started coaching girls here the last 5 or 6 years. I knew girls coach 5 years ago. He did it. Roy Benz then was the AD, and he said, you got to help this guy out, and they did. So I started getting interested in coaching the girls, and they work just as hard as the boys. Obviously, aren't as big and strong, but they work that hard. So it's been fun working with girls, too. So I just enjoy the sport, enjoy the kids, and seeing them prosper. We just went to a wedding last weekend, and one of the girls I helped coach, and it's just, she's very appreciative and stuff, and it's just wonderful. Good experience.
You probably see a lot of your former athletes out in the world.
Oh yeah, and I get letters once in a while, phone calls. Sometimes I run into them. Mike Ball's the kid that ran for me. He wasn't a superstar, but he busted his fan. He was a 52 flat quarter miler. He came to the football reunion a couple years ago and sat down in the bleachers, talked to me for a half an hour about the kind of influence I was on him. And just those things happen like that, and I go, wow. That was great. We went to the Goshen Relays one year, and the kids hadn't been doing what they were capable of doing. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I know what I'm going to do. So I went and I got a tape of George Patton, the movie George Patton. So we played it for the practice before the meet. Of course, Patton gets out and gives that big speech, you know. I can't mention some of the words in there, but anyway, the kids are going, wow, man, he was high. I said, yeah, that guy was a little tough guy. He says, Coach, he reminds me of you. I said, oh, no, I wasn't like that. But it fired the kids up. We won the Goshen Relays.
That's right.
On the Patton speech, man. That was great. It was. Yeah. Just whatever you can do that's legal and ethical to fire kids up, do it, man.
Yeah.
You know. And the kids started really liking me because I was high strung. But I knew a lot about coaching. I was a good teacher of technique in the events, but they liked the enthusiasm I had for the sport. So, and what a great opportunity for me was when I came here and got my job because of Hugh Hilston. For the first 10 years here, all I coached was freshman phys ed. You know how many kids I recruited out of freshman phys ed? A lot of kids. So it was really great that happened. I talked to him about, and Bill Nixon, who's a great guy, is in the Hall of Fame for baseball and football. Him and I had a great relationship. He coached baseball, I coached track. He never took any of my kids. I never took any of his kids. And we just worked fine. We respect each other. I got a great letter from Bill Nixon, which I keep private. They gave me when I retired. It was a wonderful letter about who I was and the way I fit in and how he respected me. And I'm going, I started crying. Bill Nixon respected me, but he did. We got along really well. He lives in Florida now, and he's invited me over a couple of times to go visit him. Just all the people that I run into in this county, particularly the men that I respect. A lot of them are gone now. A lot of them aren't. But you grow as a human being if you're listening to other people, and you take in what you want to take in, and something you don't like, you cast it out. But you learn and grow. And as the years went by, I got better and better as a coach and a person. Of course, my lovely wife is a big part of that too. Yeah. So, and she has been a wonderful person. All these yearbooks over there, they got records of all the kids that did track and pictures and stuff. She put them together. She worked very hard. She would come and help set up the banquet stuff all the time when I was coaching. And we had 2 kids grades. She did a great job raising them. I had to quit coaching on track in '99. 98 was my last year as a head coach. In '99, I stayed on as assistant coach to sort of get John going. And John was a great assistant coach. He was with me, and Paul Patrick with me for all the '90s. And I wanted to see Eric play baseball in high school and college, so I had to make a decision there, so I decided to quit for a while. So I did. I got to tell you a real brief story about John and Paul. They're both young coaches, very athletic. So after our practices in the 90s, at the end of practice, we'd go out and run a 2 or 3 mile run. And we'd always end up coming down Baker Street from Michigan, and we'd always end up being a race. They begrudgingly admit this. They never beat me at the end. And I was 25 years older than them. I always outran them across the bridge. They go, oh, what are you doing, man? I said, we're racing, buddy. So I never got me. It was great, man. And I love both those guys. Paul's down at CMA right now doing well. But just fun stuff like that. And I got a secret to tell. Very few people know about this. When we got back from Albuquerque, we were here like a week. We had to go to school and all that. I told you about that. I get a call about our 4th day here, and I get a call from this kid, Jeff Gangloff, who ends up being my senior distance runner, who went to Tri-State and did very well. He says, Coach, I haven't met you yet, but I'd like to invite you to a meeting at the Brethren Church Rectory. Okay, would you please come out? I'm trying to figure something out. So I went there. So the Gangloff family and Jeff were there. Larry Holloway, myself, and Alan Shockney were there. They were trying to come up with a name for the race, the Blueberry Stomp. So we're sitting around talking. All of a sudden, my brain went ding, ding, ding. I remember watching Lucille Ball, her and her friend Vivian Vance were on vacation in France, and they went into a bin and started stomping grapes. I said, what about the Blueberry Stomp? Well, that doesn't sound too bad, Coach. Let's talk. So we talked for about 10 minutes. They all voted the Blueberry Stomp. So I actually came up with the name Blueberry Stomp. Yeah, I did. I'm not bragging about it, but it's a fact. So yeah. Great. So the first stomp was run off the Baker Street Bridge, and a teammate of mine from Elkhart went to Ball State. Henry Mark won that race. So that was sort of neat. But I ran in the first 15 of them. At age 40, I thought, well, I've run 3 marathons. I've done enough of this. Almost got under 60 minutes twice. Boy, Roy Benson and I ran together. We ran 60:02 one time. That was cruel, watching that clock go past 60. But so I still enjoy. I wish I could run now. I've got Parkinson's disease. My feet get hot all the time, but I still go out and run as much as I can. Because I appreciate the sport. It keeps you healthy. And I've got a heart problem, and I've had that for 15 years. I'm doing fine. If you go sit down on the couch at home because you don't feel good about yourself, you aren't going to make it.
No.
You got to keep getting at it. But I just, the kids I had in track and the experience I had coaching track here and all the great help I got from the administration as far as running meets and stuff, that we got the sectional a long time ago. And I just so appreciative of all the people that have been involved in helping the track program. Like, this is another story. It's a true story. Part of the reason I stayed on my next year to help Baron's first year of coaching in 1999 was that Brian was a senior hurdler.
Our son.
So I got to coaching. So it's a week before the sectional. We get a call on a Friday night from the ambulance. You know the bad intersection out here at Jefferson and 31 before they changed it? Him and his buddy were taking his buddy's girlfriend home. They went across this intersection there and they got hit from the south side, and Brian was sitting on that side. Guy's going 60 miles an hour. A state trooper behind him saw it happen, knocked the car clear up in the air about 15 feet, and he rolled in the ditch. So we get a call from a guy I know, and his name is in the ambulance. Russell, your son's been in a bad accident. I said, what? He says, well, I said, is he dying? He said, no, I don't think so, but you probably need to see him out at the hospital. So we were out there. He's all banged up. He's got a bad bruise in his hip. His neck's hurt. We found out later his spinal cord was snapped. Wasn't snapped, it was
Just a splinter, just a
Well,
hairline crack. I know.
no,
That's
it
okay.
had a whiplash. He had a whiplash of the spinal cord.
Yeah, whiplash.
So anyway, the next week, that kid, who's really not a tough kid, but he is a tough kid. He's done very well in life. He runs in a sectional championship and sets a sectional record in intermediate hurdles, 300 hurdles, in that situation. I was so proud of my son. I was so proud of him. And the other one ended up playing professional baseball for a couple of years, but I love both my boys equally. And Brian came out there and ran a track and set a sectional record. Mm-hmm. What can you say as a dad, huh?
That's an amazing story.
So yeah, but he was a kid wanting to prove to his dad he was tough, and he did. Yeah, so
That's about as tough as it gets.
I just had, you go see coaches at meets and go talk to all these guys you know over a period of time. One of the interesting things about being a coach, it's probably true in all sports, you're their buddy when you're losing. You start winning and they aren't very friendly to you anymore. That's just a fact of life, They're cordial, but they really just sort of hate you. And I wasn't much of a friend in the 1980s to everybody because they didn't like me, Warsaw particularly. It's fun. They have been our rival, but I have great respect for Warsaw and their athletic program. But it was sure fun to beat them all the time. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much all the stuff I've got. I can't tell you enough about the support of this lady right
that's
here.
Okay, honey.
Not only did she make these journals up, but she was always at the track meets when she could get there.
Yeah.
She brought the little boys along with her, and they watched the meets. They learn to grow and become interested in athletics and stuff.
Yeah.
And she's just been a wonderful wife. We're almost, in a year and a half, will be 50 years we've been married. So I've had a great relationship with Jeanette. She's just as much a part of me as the kids are. So very happy. I quit coaching at Plymouth in 1998 because I knew my younger son was going to be a good baseball player and I wanted to watch him play. And so I asked John if he said, he wanted me next year to sort of get him going, even though he knew a lot about it. And Brian would be a senior, so that's when I got to coach Brian in the hurdles, and he ended up winning the sectional championship.
Our son.
So for the next 5 years, I was running around the state and the country watching Eric play college and professional baseball. And then in 1986, after the season, 2006, and John called me and said, Russ, I could really use you back really bad. I said, you know something, John, I've seen Eric play 1 year, he's going to play next year, but they don't play most of their games until the summer. So I said, I'll come back and help you. And that was just a great experience to be around the kids that John had coached now. We had some really good teams. John got a lot of the kids off the basketball team. When we won the state, we had Mark Danielson and Corey Booker. Palmer kid ran, I can't remember his first name. So we had 4 kids come off the basketball team. By the way, Corey Booker ended up being an All-American at Manchester College. He just started running the senior year at Plymouth, which is really great. We had Jacob Palmer, him, Mark Danielson. We had one more. Who was it? That's somebody else. I can't remember who it was. But anyway, those kids ran with us just for 2 years. They never run before. We went to state both years in the mile relay, which was fantastic. So the year after 2 of them graduated, David Burrows was a senior, had her school record in 23 feet. Shut up, Russ. Wake up. 23 feet in the long jump. but he was also our record holder in the intermediate hurdles. He'd broken Brian's record. And David was a wonderful young man. So we're going to the state meet that year, and John's the coach. We're running our stuff, and David gets second in the state in the long jump, jumps 23 feet, which is wonderful. So we get to the mile relay, and we're running there's 3 heats of those relays. We're in the middle heat. And John says, I'm getting tired. I said, yeah, I'm too. So what are we going to do? And I don't know whose idea. I don't know if it's my idea or John's. One of us had an idea. Let's just try David Burrows on the anchor leg. He'd never run a quarter, never run an open quarter in high school. And there was a kid from Wallacey named Eric Brown. He's a tremendous quarter miner. Nobody in our conference, including Elkhart Memorial Warsaw, anybody ever run him down the anchor leg. Usually he was 20, 30 yards behind, you were done. We never beat him. So we ran David on the anchor leg. So we're running that race. We had Danielson. No, Jeanette, that's a mile relay at the state meet. Don't worry about it. This is in 2009 or 10. But anyway, we got a mile relay team we threw together. It had good kids on it. We decided to run David on the end. So kids do a great job. We get down to the anchor leg. Curtis Ivey was on that team too. He was a great quarter miner. Ended up placed in the state 2 years later. So we take off, and David's about 15 yards ahead of Brown. So we run the back stretch, and here comes Eric Brown, just starts coming up. So we get off the curve. Eric Brown started passing him. David cooked him, just left him in the dust. We never had a kid do that, and we just missed a school record by 1/10 of a second. And it's the first time we ever beat Eric Brown, and David Burrows had never run the mile relay. He ran 48 flat mile relay, and he beat Brown. That's not. I mean, I got a lot of stories like that where kids just stepped up and just, by golly, you are not going to beat me, because I'm from Plymouth. It's just, we never ran the quarter before, and he beats Eric Brown, who always got all those mangled people in the relay leg. So that was a lot of fun for me. It was a lot of fun for him. A lot of fun for Coach Barron. So I don't know what else to say about track. It's a wonderful sport, as I said. You learn a lot of things about yourself and what ways you're capable of doing, and later in life you think back, I made it through that, by golly, I can make it through this.
Mm-hmm.
So what I like to ask everybody kind of at the end is to take a look back at your time coaching and playing, and running, and how do you think that sports and coaching shaped your life?
Wow. There's no question, except for my wife and my family and God, that it was so important, because I learned so much about determination, desire, doing the right thing, toughness, the right kind of toughness. It made me a better man. Being all around all these kids all the time, they're positive kids, and never quit. I've got this stuff now and other stuff, and there's no quitting Russ, because most of it because of those guys. I'd always been a guy that was a competitor, but I learned so much from the kids I coached about being a classy person and yet being a warrior on one side. And they just reinforced what I believed, and I was so appreciative of being around that kind of kid all the years that I taught and coached. I mean, I love teaching. I was an excellent teacher, but like now, and I don't want to put down the school corporation because it's all over the state, you can't even touch a kid in the classroom. You pat them on the back and say, you did a good job, they fire you. Which out in the track, I can hug them and, with that stuff, and it's a little looser out there, so it's nice. And that's me, I'm very enthusiastic. So it definitely shaped my life, though, because I learned there were some things out there that were more important than money, more important than a lot of things that were bad. And as I said when I first started, I wouldn't trade that experience in track coaching for $2 million. No way. You could never. All the wonderful kids I ran into, and I get letters and calls and emails once in a while from them, how you doing, coach? Here's what I'm doing now. And I just go, wow, thanks, man. It's really nice. So that's the whole thing. And I developed a great relationship with a lot of coaches at Plymouth High School, a lot of head coaches. The administration has been very good to me. I love this community. And it all revolves around my experience of being a track coach here. Just what a wonderful sport. And a lot of my kids have done very well. Mark Danielson, who Dad used to own the funeral home down here, he just passed his test to become a Top Gun in the Naval Air Force. He's gonna fly an F-18. So I told you about Joe Boener. I mean, just kids that have done remarkable things, and I've had an opportunity to be part of their life, and I can look at them and just smile and think, that kid deserves to do that because he's a good person. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.